we are in Amsterdam with the amazing Dorie Clark. Dorie is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and an executive coach. Have I left anything out?
Those are some good highlights. Thank you, Penny.
And my favourite quote is, "You're a thought leader on thought leadership." It's amazing. So share with us, Dorie, you are known for reinvention. That's one of the things that you help people with. And I think reinvention has a beautiful synergy with future-proofing, which is what this is all about. So talk to me about sort of how you help people reinvent and some of your top tips around someone who's wanting to reinvent themselves. Where would they kind of start?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you completely, Penny, on the importance of future-proofing. I actually have talked about that as well. So I think we're very much on the same page. When it comes to reinvention, I think there's a few important steps and key points to keep in mind. The first one, I get talked to a lot. I get a lot of messages from people who are more senior professionals about reinventing themselves. There's obviously a lot of stress, and sometimes people will write and they'll say, well, it might be fine if you're 25 or something like that, but I'm 50 or I'm 55. What do I do? And I think that, especially for folks who are in that situation, there's a few things that are just kind of useful life hacks.
Yep.
For instance, one is that I actually think that in many ways the importance of social media is overrated. I think people pay too much attention to it. However, I think that if you are over 50, you actually can't do enough social media. And the reason for that is that it's a signaling device.
Yeah.
It's simply a way of showing people that you are with it. It's a way of showing people that you keep up with things, that you are on top of things, and it helps allay people's concerns. Because implicitly, they can't say this, they can't ask this, but if they see an older job candidate versus a younger one, they're going to say, is the older person's knowledge out of date? Or are they willing to learn new things? Are they willing to keep up? And so if you are able to make it so that when they are Googling you, that you have more followers on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, the vehicle of choice is, boom, drop the mic. You have officially allayed that concern. So that's one kind of easy thing that if you focus on as a senior professional, I think can pay disproportionate benefits.
Interesting, very interesting. So talk to me then a little bit about the trends that you're observing through your work around the future of work. What's kind of shifted? I mean, you've been doing what you do now for roughly around 12 years.
Yeah.
So what are you observing in sort of the last 12 months, with technology and artificial intelligence starting to evolve? How are you seeing things shift just with the sorts of clients that you're with?
Well, I think that in many places across the economy, there's been lots of conversation about widening inequality gaps, right?
Yeah.
And I think that actually that is it's true in the workforce as well when it comes to branding. I am a big proponent of personal branding and encourage people to go for it. And the truth is, the vast majority of professionals have very limited personal brands. They do not consciously try to cultivate it. They are oftentimes invisible online, and they are known only by their closest colleagues that they work with. Beyond that, people don't have any visibility into them or into who they are. That is a huge weakness, because if you lose your job with a situation like that, well, who's going to save you? Who's going to help you? Nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
So trying to make that extra effort to build your brand to a greater extent is extremely valuable and important, and you will get disproportionate results from that activity. You might say, oh, but there's so much competition, everybody's trying to do blah, blah, blah. The truth is, yes, there's lots of competition at the starting gate, but most people give it up after about 3 weeks because they are impatient. If you simply keep going and you are not producing things for your own kind of ego and benefit about, oh, I'm interested in this, I'll write about this, I'll write about this. But if you are trying to create a cohesive professional brand and you are writing about similar things, more and more people will get to know who you are, and that is your life raft. That is what is going to both protect you against a downside and open it up so that over time you're able to have access to many more new opportunities than you would have otherwise even imagined was possible.
And it's so interesting you say that, because I met with Jacob Morgan, who's the #1 keynote on the future of work in the US, and I said to him, how have you gotten to where you are, and being so successful around the future of work? And he said to me 3 things. He said consistency, persistence, and visibility, which speaks totally to what you're saying. And I've seen it in my work. I always say to people, no one will buy from you if they don't know you exist. And it's taken me, I think, probably about 2 years to build a brand. And it's been a lot of hard work. I'm not doing more social media now than I did before. It's just been chipping away. And then you start to get that tipping point where enough people know that and start to speak about you, then it then kind of has that flow where you create a bit of pull rather than this consistent push. So talk to me a little bit, because we're talking about future-proofing. You work for yourself, you've reinvented your career, and you've become, in your own right, very successful on the global stage in this space. How have you future-proofed yourself in the context of happiness? Because you clearly love what you do, I'm assuming, yeah?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to happiness and sort of planning for the future, how to future-proof that. I think, I guess what the question implies is how do you take action now so that you will not have regret in the future about your choices? And so for me, one of the things that I'm kind of an advocate for, Google famously popularized the 20% time when it comes to innovation and spending time in creative work pursuits. I actually think that if we apply that in our own personal lives, that can be pretty cool as well. And so I like to spend 20% of my time exploring different creative pursuits. And they might have professional crossover or professional application, but they might not. And so, recently in 2016, a big push that I made was around stand-up comedy. For this coming year, for 2018, I'm going to be entering, as we've discussed, a fellowship program for writing musical theater. So I figure, if there's things that I'm interested in, you might as well just do them.
Dive in and make it happen.
Yeah,
because there's so many people with these bucket lists that just never get realised. And I was sharing today in my talk that the #1 regret of the dying is I lived the life that someone else expected of me, not the life I wanted for myself. And I think that's a life that's led not doing those things that you want to tick off that list. So the last question I've got to you is, as you know, we've spoken a lot about, I deal a lot with fear, and help people work through fear. So how, you stand on huge stages. Today I think there was like 4,500 people in a row. That for a lot of people would be scary. How have you overcome fear in your life? Or would you say you're fearless?
I'm certainly not fearless. But I think we're just all afraid of different things,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So speaking on a stage, whatever. Like I understand that's a traumatic thing for many people, but it's just not one of my triggers. So there's a lot of things that are scary, and I think you have to be strategic about putting them into the category of things you're afraid of that you're right to be afraid of versus things that you're afraid of that, if you want to grow as a person, you need to overcome. Now, there are many things that I'm afraid of that I feel like, you know what, Dorie, you're exactly right. You should not do that. Do I understand why people jump out of airplanes? No. I'll say for the record, I don't. Some people think that they can't really live unless they jump out of an airplane. It's a fucking airplane. What are you thinking? That's ridiculous. I don't ride on roller coasters. I'm sorry, Great Barrier Reef. I think scuba diving sounds terrifying. I'm never gonna do that. That's awful. I don't want to. And I'm just not. But there's also things where it really is a barrier to something. And in that case, if the motivation is enough, then you need to do it. Like recently, my big triumph for the year so far has been, there was this girl that I was interested in, and did I know that she was gay? No, I didn't. And I told her that I was interested in her anyway, and that was very terrifying. So thank you.
But the thing is, as a woman, you'd be flattered regardless.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't think she was gonna beat me up or anything. But it was like very scary because there's like a very high risk of rejection.
Yeah.
So
Now you need to tell us what the outcome was.
well, TBD, right? I think the outcome is that maybe she was a little confused. So we're waiting to see. But yeah. So anyway, that was like my act of bravery.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been thoroughly enjoyable.
Good talking with you, Penny.
Thanks.